I'm pretty sure I mentioned that I was about done doing boat projects for a little bit and was ready to go somewhere. The weather has kind of straightened itself out. It seemed like we're having days where just mild winds, decent temperatures, clear skies so far, or mostly clear. So we're currently underway, headed up to Whidbey Island. I'm going to go on the east side of Whidbey this time instead of going over towards the Port Townsend side. And so I won't be crossing the Juan de Fuca Strait up there, so hopefully that'll work out a little bit better. I'm about halfway between Shilshole and Edmonds right now. I'm watching the ferries cross in front of me. I have to kind of split the difference between them and let one get going and go behind it or whatever. So underway, everything is looking good so far, and I will check in later and let you know how we're doing. But we're gonna stay on the east side of Whidbey Island and go explore up there a little bit and just play it by ear. All right, well, we have dropped the hook in Elger Bay, which is what I just showed you there. And we're currently in 40 feet of water. I dropped the anchor in about 20, closer into shore. And right now I'm just kind of hanging out here, making sure we're set good. And before I relax, I'll make sure we're all good. It's the wind's a little out of the north, not much, but that's basically north is kind of that way, so going to be sheltered by that hill right there. The other option was to go up to Crescent Bay, which was, I think, probably another maybe couple hours up the road, and I just thought I'd stop here for a little bit and start to see about making me something to eat. And assuming the anchor holds, this will probably be where we'll spend the night, and then we'll continue on north tomorrow. Well, it's probably going to be a little dark to really see what's going on out here. Maybe the camera will sort it out, but this is our anchor spot for the night. And it is as calm as a mill pond out here right now, so this turned out to be a pretty good choice, I think. And it's quiet. I've been over in Montana, and that's one thing we first realized when we first moved up there was how quiet it is when you're out in the country. And even just sitting here, you know, it's so kind of noisy at Shilshole there. You can hear the sirens in the city and all that kind of thing, so it's kind of nice to just be calm and quiet and peaceful out here. Trying not to talk too loud. Yeah, it's pretty nice. I think the tide is in, and no worries right now about the anchor holding, because all we're doing is just bobbing around out here, so we'll be fine, I think. It looks to me like from the wind forecast, maybe we'll be pointing the other direction in the morning, but we should be all good. So that's it. Well, we just dropped the hook. We're anchored off of a little tiny cove here that's got kind of a little park by it. So I don't know that it has a name. Maybe it does. But basically where we are is we're right across from Coupeville on Whidbey Island. So this is Whidbey Island behind us, and that's the town of Coupeville over there. Now Coupeville's got a big long historic wharf. I think everything's historic up here, but this big long wharf that you could side tie to for the night, about $1 a foot, something like that. So that was an option, but it looked to me like the wind forecast for tonight is having the winds, what wind there is, nothing major, but it looks like what it is going to be coming out of the northwest again. So where we're at in this little bay, this little cove, I'll call it, is kind of on the northwest end of it. There's a big hill behind us, so we should be fairly sheltered from any wind that pulls up. Right now it's calm as a mill pond, which it's been most of the day. I had initially looked at Crescent Bay, which is kind of straight across that Saratoga Passage or whatever it is from Camano Island. I hope I'm getting any of these names right, probably not, but anyway, the guide says that Crescent Bay is a good anchoring spot with good shelter from northwest winds. So that was my goal, was to go there. But I started closing in on it today earlier, and there was just boats all over the place, running around, going fast, going slow. Couldn't figure out what was going on in there. What it was they were dropping crab pots or lobster pots or some kind of pots that have buoys on them with obviously rope all over the place. And they have dropped hundreds of them in there. The whole bay is just covered with those little buoys. Once you get the binoculars out and start trying to pick a path through them. I did pick a path through them because I thought, well, maybe they're out here in the water, and once I get in closer to anchoring territory, they won't be there. But they were. And the guys that are working them have these kind of heavy, commercial fishing boats, and so they're going fast for a minute and then slow down, then they go fast and they slow down. So they're making a lot of wakes and really unpredictable stuff. And I thought, well, if they're dropping them off in the morning, chances are maybe they're going to come around at night and pick them back up again. And if so, this little Crescent Bay is going to be just a wake fest. So I decided to pass on that spot. That is the last kind of, looks like, decent place to maybe tie up for the night until you get up there in the Deception Pass area. Now, Deception Pass, looking at the current chart, has a slack time at about 11 o'clock tomorrow and 5 o'clock tomorrow. So might go through there. I haven't checked our fuel yet. We've done about 45 or 50 miles, nautical miles, and I filled up just before we left. So I'll check fuel and see, kind of do some planning on where I think I'm gonna need fuel again, and check the weather out for 3 or 4 days. I gotta look at the calendar because I got something going on back in Salt Lake. So I don't have an open-ended schedule right now. So I don't know if I'll go through today, this time up, or maybe I'll poke around up here some more and then start working my way back easy, or maybe I'll see if I catch a good window like this. I could obviously cross the Juan de Fuca Strait today with no trouble and go back through that Port Townsend Canal like I did the first time and all that kind of stuff. So anyway, I'm rambling. I'll stop. But I'm down for the night. It's a little bit early, but again, there's not a good jumping off spot. I'm kind of have to commit to a course of action here once I leave this spot. So I'm just going to hang out here for the night. I might get the dinghy out, run over to Coupeville, and walk up and down the main street, maybe buy me an ice cream cone or something. But yeah, everything is good so far. Again, we're cruising right along. All right, I just took the dinghy out for a minute, and this has kind of been in the back of my mind, my life raft. If the big boat's sinking, we'd step up into the dinghy as it goes down. I think I'd rather have a life raft for several reasons. First of all, you can't just deploy the thing. You have to stop when you're at about a 45-degree angle and rotate that engine on that spindle thing it's on. So you have to lower the winch down until the boat's about an angle. I'll do the same thing. I'll raise it up, stop about here, lay the motor down on the side, and then come the rest of the way up. Secondly, these latches that it's on, so these kind of swing back to let it off, and once it's off, this part will release over this hump here, and then this can kind of come up and down a little bit, but it's pretty hard to do sitting in it because your weight's all to this side of the boat, which is making those go down. I think if you came up and had someone on the boat, or someone could, you know, step off and the other person take the weight on the other side, might be okay, but pretty unstable. I did not feel very good driving around in it, and I think I'm going to take the advice of my guy that was the broker on this deal and look for an inflatable rib to put back here, and probably just lift it up and put it up on top, because this takes about, you know, 3 operations to lower it. So if the boat was sinking, this son of a bitch go right down with it. You just wouldn't have time to lower it and stop and put the motor down and get the gas in and da-da-da-da-da. It would just, well, you'd just go down with the ship. So not planning on that happening. I'm not planning on sinking anyway, but if I did, it would be quite unfortunate to have to try to use that dinghy as my life raft. So I'm just going to put the thing away for now and go about other things to do. Okay, there we are. Just started cooking dinner, so just gonna keep track of how we do here. We've got our little miniature electric frying pan going and baking up some potatoes, or cooking some potatoes in there. I'm gonna throw a pork chop in a minute, so we'll see how we do by the time we get all done. Dinner's on the plate, 92%, so we used 4% of our house load to cook dinner in that little frying pan, so that wasn't too bad. Okay, well, I got to admit, I'm a little bit of an anxious anchorer. I should be getting over it a little bit, because I am sitting here. We've been tied up now off of Coupeville for about, I'm looking at the clock up here, about 2.5 going on 3 hours. All of my electronic aids are insisting everything's fine. This is our anchor alarm. We're still in, hang on. We're still inside of our circle. So we're good there. And I did forget to pause this thing when I ran out in the dinghy for a little bit and the alarm went off, so it is definitely going to alarm when the phone goes outside of the circle. And I can see the chart plotter over here down in the lower helm, and I can watch us swing back and forth, marking up the track over the places we've swung before. So all of my electronic information that I have at my disposal says everything is fine. What's given me a little bit of consternation, if you will, is the wind's coming a little bit out of the southwest, and all the forecasts that I saw said it was going to be coming out of the north or northwest, which would have us swung out into the bay, not into this little bay that we're in, this little cove we're in. So we were swinging more into this cove than I really wanted to, and I've been upstairs watching the depth finder. The lowest depth we got to was, we had 12 feet of water under the keel, and that was at low tide. So you can see right now let's see if we can get the reflection off that so you can see it. I don't know if you can see it very well, but we're just coming up on, starting our way back up. The tide's coming up. So we'll be gaining about 7 feet, almost, yeah, 7 feet over the next 6 hours or so. So, you know, around about midnight, 1 o'clock, we're going to be topped out, and so we'll have another 7 feet of water under the keel unless we're blown into shore. And again, all indications are at this point we haven't budged, that the anchor's been set tight. I did back down on it and saw the anchor chain go straight, you know, so I feel like I set the thing good. But despite the fact that all these electronic tools at my disposal are telling me everything's fine, my brain just won't get on board with that information. And so I just keep watching. I'm thinking, am I a little closer? Am I a little closer? No. So I know those of you who've been anchoring forever are probably laughing at me. I'm a newbie at this anchoring in unknown waters. I'm sure I'll get more comfortable with it, but right now I'm not all that comfortable. So, but I'll be fine. I'll report back in the morning. Last night over there at Elger Bay, It was so calm and quiet. I mean, I slept like a baby. Here, we do have the Air Force. There's an Air Force base over on Whidbey Island, and so jets have been going over the top of us a little bit. Hopefully they're kind of wound down now for the evening, or they will be soon. 3 of them just went over a minute ago in formation. They're pretty loud when they go over because they're not too high up there. But assuming that winds down and our wind does what the weatherman says it's going to do, which is swings around a little bit and pushes us kind of more out into the bay, I think I'll be just fine. And I think I'll be fine even if it doesn't, but I'll be more nervous. So there you go. The wind forecast for tonight is having the winds, what wind there is, nothing major, but it looks like what it is going to be coming out of the northwest again. So I sat down to edit this video, and I realized that I didn't really give you the update on how our night went there at that little Penn Bay that we were at, which is that little bay that we anchored in north of Coupeville there. So the weather had forecast the wind to be light and to be coming mostly out of the northwest. It was anything but light. It was sustained at 20 miles an hour from about 8 o'clock at night on till about 5 in the morning, and I'll get to why I knew it was 5 in the morning in a minute. But so it started picking up, and it was coming straight out of the east. Now apparently what it is the wind that's kind of coming in from the Juan de Fuca straight off the ocean can just go over the little brow of a hill there at the west end of that Coupeville Bay and kind of blow straight up the thing. So that's what was happening, but as it was maybe coming around that hill or whatever, it was blowing me into the bay, so my tail end was blowing into the bay more than I was really comfortable with. So I watched and watched and watched to make sure everything was holding good, and it was. And then so I set my anchor alarm. The way it works on the phone is as you drop the anchor, you set the spot. So you go, okay, this is the center of my circle. Then you can size the circle up, you know, in or out, around how big of a circle you want to stay inside of as you're swinging around. So I think all that happened is I made the circle a little too small. So I watched everything until I had cooked dinner. I watched, you know, everything, made sure we were holding well, and we were holding solid. But then so I went to bed, and at 4 in the morning, now it was getting pretty noisy. It was a little tough sleeping because when you swung one way, the waves would kind of just be thumping against the front of the boat, and when you'd swing the other way, there'd be this big washing machine sound down the side of the boat as the wave broke against the side of the boat. Back at the stern, right where I was trying to lay my poor bald head down for some rest. And so it was pretty noisy, and it wasn't great sleeping conditions. But I managed to kind of doze off, and then at 4 a.m., roughly right around 4, the anchor alarm goes off. Now it's a klaxon sound, like wah, wah, and it's loud. And I bail out of bed and run up here and look at everything. I look at the anchor alarm was just outside of the circle. It wasn't like we were showing a line heading out of it. And when I checked the chart plotter, we were still in the same, you know, swing radius that we'd been in. And so I sat and watched everything for a while, and I could still see us hit the end of the chain one direction and stop, and hit the end of the chain the other direction and stop. So it still was apparent that we were holding, and all that would really happen is I'd made my circle just a tiny bit too small. So I bumped it out 1 or 2 meters and hung out for a while. I watched it, and I was like, all right, if it goes off again, then starting the engines up. But it didn't. And so I, you know, laid and listened to the thing I mean, we were just rocking and rolling, swinging back and forth, and we were all over the place. But at about 5, I could tell that it was starting to ease off just a little bit. And, there's still some pretty big fetch to the waves, so it's taken a while for things to calm down. But I could hear the wind was calming down a little bit. So I did manage to get some sleep, and then the phone went off. Somebody texted me or something in the morning, woke me up about 8:30, and it was like it was all a dream. I mean, when I looked out the window, I was like, you've got to be kidding me. It's, again, just flat, calm, like nothing had happened. So it was not the most restful night I've had in the boat, but got through it okay. And I got to tell you, I mean, it does build my confidence up, knowing, okay, we were just in the kind of anchoring conditions that I think are probably pretty common around here, sand or mud or whatever it is. And, I dropped the anchor, I backed down on it till the chain went out kind of straight. I knew I was set, and I don't think that thing moved all night. I think the anchor held really well with all 100 feet of chain out there. Now, you did see when I was bringing it up after Elger Bay there, that where my splice is, it's kind of bigger around, and I watched a video on a different way to splice, which kind of you peel one of the threads back. I'll show you when I do it, but I think I'm going to do that because it does make your splice a little smaller and makes it more kind of like chain. So according to the guy that was showing us how to do it, he said it works better in your winch as you're pulling it in. So I am going to redo that, but overall everything went fine, and I should be starting to have more confidence that we're going to be fine when we drop that anchor in the water. Now, will we always be able to sleep? I mean, if I'd have had somebody up here in the forward cabin that night, they wouldn't have been able to sleep. That was where it was the noisiest, as the waves were thunking against the front of the boat when we'd be swinging one way or the other. So, we wouldn't sleep through it, but I don't think we're going to be putting the boat at risk, which is the big thing. So I think that part, again, my confidence level's going up a little bit. Out our window, we've got a boat and a tug and the high-speed ferry. And this is what it looks like on on the chart. So everyone's getting, it looks like the ferry's going right down the middle of the traffic separation zone just to stay out of the way, but that thing, I just checked it, is doing 32 knots, so it's cranking right along. Yeah, it's just going to split the difference between the two and carry on. So we're not going to see a wreck today, but that doesn't seem exactly perfect how that played out. I think that tug, which is the Beau Brusco, the Beau Brusco, should have probably been the guy to make some change. But yeah, that's interesting. I've been listening to the port operations on the radio, and I haven't heard them talking to each other or anything like that, but maybe I'm not scanning, I'm just listening to the port operations, so maybe they called each other and all agreed on what they were going to do. But yeah, there you go. It gets a little busy here as you get closer to Seattle. just for the record, I just made it back to Shilshole, and we've been motoring since 9:30 this morning, and we are only at 62% is where we were. I hope that reflection's not killing us, but we were at 62% when I plugged back in. So running off the engines, we were at about 30% this morning after I got done cooking and started everything up at about 9:30. So I ran from 9:30 to 5:30, and we only charged up 63%. So we're not charging as fast as I thought we would be. Now I'm plugged back into shore power now, so we'll charge up off shore power. But we're pulling 200 watts all the time, so I probably should have shut off like the internal cameras, the computer, all that travel stuff. I probably could have shut all that off and got our load down to pretty much nothing. But I just wanted to run it and see what the load looked like with real life, without taking any precautions. So what this tells me is that it might be worthwhile to put a couple of solar panels up on the top of some soft solar panels up there. However, that damn generator, I tried to start that up this morning because I thought, well, I'll start the generator and slap some juice in. That way it wouldn't start again. It was doing the same thing it was doing the other day. So gonna have to do something about that thing. And I think I mentioned the dinghy is not that fun. So anyway, I'm back, all safe and sound. There's no wind, and our docking went just fine. I think I put the camera up in the window. I don't know how well you could see it, but I just came in really slow. I had everything ready to go. I had no trouble pulling in the slip. I actually kind of jumped off onto the dock because it was going so well and we were up close, and I knew we weren't going anywhere. There's nothing moving the boat around, so I did. However, I had my boat hook out there ready to reach down if I needed to and snag a cleat. So all went well with the docking, and no one was there to catch a line, so that's good. Kind of wanted to make sure I could get this thing tied up without someone being there to catch a line. So anyway, wrapping up this trip now.